She knocked on the wrong door during a heavy storm. He ended up being the Mafia boss. Who? A soaked photographer pounds on a giant iron door in the middle of a blackout. It swings open, and the man inside is the most feared boss on the coast. He lets her in, but locks the world out. Then he sees what's on her camera, one photo that could start a war. Outside, guns wait. Inside, rules snap into place. She's trapped with a man who is gentle to her and lethal to everyone else. But something's off. A fake friend texts from the dark. A smiling advisor pours poison behind closed doors. The house itself is watching. She's told, "Stay close, do not run," as he trains her to survive the night. Sparks fly, trust breaks. Footsteps in the hall and a van in the fog. What secret did that picture really catch? Who inside wants her gone first? The enemies at the gate? Or the traitor at the table? And when the storm hits hardest, will she escape the devil's house? Or choose the devil who would burn the world to keep her safe? Through the rain-lashed windows, Sloane watched sheets of water cascade down the glass, creating ever-shifting patterns in the darkness beyond. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment back home, with cream-colored walls and furniture that probably cost more than her yearly income. A king-size bed dominated the space, its crisp linens still perfectly made despite her current sprawl across it. Her wet clothes had been whisked away by a silent maid, replaced with silk pajamas that felt foreign against her skin. The camera bag remained clutched to her chest, her fingers tracing the familiar worn edges. Inside, safely cushioned, were her livelihood and passion, 2 camera bodies, 3 specialized lenses, and most importantly, the memory cards from tonight's charity gala at the Seabright. Thunder cracked overhead, making her flinch. The storm showed no signs of letting up, its fury seeming to intensify with each passing minute. Sloane's mind wandered back to the man who'd answered the door. Roman Voss. Even soaking wet and exhausted, she hadn't missed the way he carried himself, like a predator at rest. The glimpse of that scar near his collarbone when he'd turned to give orders had drawn her photographer's eye. It had looked like an old knife wound. The efficiency of his staff had been almost unnerving. Within minutes of her arrival, she'd been provided towels, dry clothes, and escorted to this room. But it was the underlying current of watchfulness that set her professional instincts on edge. She'd covered enough high-security events to recognize the signs, the subtle earpieces, the positioned sightlines, the way the guards moved with practiced coordination. Rolling onto her side, Sloane examined the room more closely. The furniture was clearly expensive, but selected for function as much as form. The heavy drapes could block all light. The windows, though large, were reinforced. A panel, near the door, probably controlled more than just the lights. This was no ordinary mansion, and Roman Voss was no ordinary wealthy recluse. She sat up, placing her camera bag carefully on the nightstand. The memory cards from the gala felt like they were burning a hole in her conscience. She'd need to start editing those photos tomorrow. Her deadline wasn't going to wait for the storm to pass. But Roman's words echoed in her mind. "You'll remain until the storm abates and security clears you." The calm authority in his voice had brooked no argument, despite her immediate instinct to protest. Another crash of thunder rattled the windows. Sloane hugged her knees to her chest, trying to process the surreal turn her evening had taken. 1 minute, she'd been navigating treacherous roads in her tiny rental car. The next, she was essentially a guest prisoner in what felt like a fortress. The contrast between the luxury surrounding her and the underlying tension was difficult to reconcile. She could hear movement in the hallway occasionally, measured footsteps passing by at regular intervals. Security rounds, she realized. The thought should have been comforting, but instead it made her more aware of her isolation. Her phone had been dying when Roman had insisted she surrender it, and now she had no way to contact her client or the inn where she was supposed to be staying. The bed was sinfully comfortable, the room temperature perfect, but sleep felt impossible. Sloane's mind kept returning to Roman's face, the way his dark eyes had assessed her with clinical precision when she'd arrived. Yet there had been something else there too, a flicker of something, when she'd refused to hand over her camera bag. Not anger exactly, more like respect, maybe even amusement, though his expression had hardly changed. Lightning illuminated the room in stark bursts, creating strange shadows on the walls. The storm's violence seemed to match the turbulence of her thoughts. Why did this place need such intense security? The guards she'd seen were clearly professional, military-trained, most likely. Their weapons hadn't been obvious, but she'd spotted the telltale bulges beneath tailored jackets. Sloane closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing mind. The silk pajamas whispered against her skin as she shifted position, Even they spoke of wealth. Real silk, not synthetic, probably custom-made for guests. Everything in this place seemed designed to project both luxury and control. The thought made her shiver despite the room's warmth. Her fingers itched to reach for her camera to document this strange environment. The photographer in her couldn't help but notice how the lightning played across the marble floors, how the occasional thunder cast dramatic shadows. But something told her that taking photos here would be a serious mistake. This wasn't a place that welcomed documentation. The rain continued its relentless assault on the windows, creating a backdrop of white noise that only emphasized the controlled silence of the house. Somewhere below, she knew men were watching monitors, patrolling corridors, maintaining whatever security protocol Roman had mentioned. And somewhere in this massive building, Roman himself was probably still awake, running this operation with the same controlled precision she'd witnessed earlier. Sloane touched her camera bag again, drawing comfort from its familiar presence. Whatever this place was, whatever she'd stumbled into, at least she had this piece of normalcy to hold on to. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now she was safe, dry, and as comfortable as one could be while being a guest in what increasingly felt like a gilded cage. Sloane jerked awake from her restless doze, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The scent of chamomile drifted through the air, mingling with the persistent hiss of rain against glass. Her neck ached from the awkward position she'd fallen asleep in, still fully dressed on top of the covers. A silver tray sat on the bedside table, steam rising from a delicate porcelain teapot and a bowl of what smelled like homemade soup. Next to it lay a cream-colored note, the handwriting precise and angular. "Please remain on this floor. R.V." Her photographer's instincts kicked in as she surveyed the room more thoroughly in the storm-darkened light. The windows stretched nearly floor to ceiling, but the glass had that particular thickness she recognized from high-security buildings. A discreet keypad was mounted beside the doorframe, its tiny LED glowing green. Beyond the balcony doors, the Adriatic churned black and angry white-capped waves visible even through the darkness. Sloane reached for her camera bag, checking her equipment with practiced hands. The bodies and lenses needed to dry properly. Humidity was a camera's worst enemy. She pulled out her laptop, relieved to find it undamaged from her mad dash through the rain. The SD cards from the gala were exactly where she'd stored them, tucked into their protective case. A sharp knock interrupted her inventory. Roman entered without waiting for a response, his earlier suit jacket discarded and shirt sleeves rolled to reveal muscular forearms. His eyes swept the room in a practiced assessment before settling on her. "Your car's location?" he asked without preamble, his tone clipped and professional. "About half a mile down the coastal road," Sloane replied, unconsciously straightening her spine. "There's a fallen pine blocking the way. The engine stalled when I tried to reverse." He nodded once, cataloging the information. "The gala. You were contracted by the Seabright?" "Yes, through their events coordinator. I'm supposed to deliver edited photos by Thursday." Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the teacup. Whether from cold or nerves, she wasn't sure. Roman moved with startling swiftness, his hand suddenly encompassing hers around the warm porcelain. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands she suspected were capable of significant violence. "Drink," he ordered softly. "You're still chilled." The tea was perfect, honey-sweetened and soothing. Roman waited until she'd taken several sips before continuing his interrogation. "Your planned route after leaving the hotel?" "The inn at Porto Marco. It's about 20 minutes further along the coast. I have a reservation for 3 nights." "That won't be possible now." His tone allowed no argument. "The storm has closed several roads. You'll need to remain here until conditions improve and security protocols are satisfied." Sloane bristled at the implied confinement. "I appreciate the shelter, but I can't just disappear. I have deadlines, clients." "Outside calls are not permitted," he cut in smoothly. "The house operates under strict protocols. You'll be provided everything you need, but you must remain in designated areas and under escort." She opened her mouth to protest, but his expression stopped her. There was something in his eyes, not threat exactly, but absolute certainty that his rules would be followed. "Temporarily," she conceded, knowing she had little choice while the storm raged. "I do need to work, though." He studied her for a moment, then reached into his pocket and produced a small plastic card. "House pass. You can work in this room. Interior doors operate on timed locks. Don't attempt to override them." After he left, Sloane connected her laptop and began reviewing the gala photos. The charity event had been elegant, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over wealthy donors in evening wear. waitstaff gliding between tables with champagne. She'd captured some beautiful moments along the waterfront patio, the string lights reflecting off the dark water. Something caught her eye in one of the waterfront series. She zoomed in on the background beyond the party's golden glow, a shadowy figure barely distinguishable against the darkness. What she'd assumed was lightning now looked more like... She enlarged the image further, her breath catching. A muzzle flash, and behind some stacked crates, a blurred shape that could be a falling body. Sloane created a new folder labeled Waterfront Oddity and saved the sequence, telling herself she was probably seeing things. The storm had played tricks with the lighting all evening. Near midnight, another knock announced the arrival of a fresh tray and extra blankets. Sloane sat cross-legged on the bed, headphones delivering quiet jazz as she continued working. She'd asked Roman about arranging transport in the morning. Surely he'd be reasonable once the weather cleared. The storm's violence had actually increased, wind howling around the building's corners and rain hammering against glass. Despite the unsettling elements of her situation, Sloane had to admit she felt safer here than she would have in her small rental car or the budget inn. Even if that safety came with more questions than answers. She adjusted her headphones, focusing on the familiar routine of photo editing while trying to ignore the growing sense that she'd stumbled into something far more complex than a simple refuge from the storm. Gray dawn crept through the balcony doors, barely visible through the endless sheets of rain. The storm hadn't weakened. If anything, it seemed angrier. The power flickered, but somewhere in the depths of the house, generators hummed steadily, keeping essential systems online. A firm knock broke the pre-dawn silence. Roman entered, followed by a guard whose movements spoke of military precision. "This is Elias," Roman said. "He needs to scan your equipment." Sloane watched as Elias methodically swept her camera gear with a handheld device. His efficiency was oddly reassuring. No wasted movements, no unnecessary touches to her expensive equipment. "Clear," Elias reported quietly. Roman's attention fixed on Sloane. "I need to see any photos you took of the waterfront area." Something in his tone made her pause. She'd spent hours with these images, and that strange sequence kept nagging at her. Why specifically the waterfront? Because what you captured could get you killed. His bluntness was jarring in the dim room. Sloane's fingers hovered over her laptop. Everything about this man screamed danger, yet he'd offered shelter, respected her property, and been oddly gentle despite his cold exterior. She pulled up the Waterfront Oddity folder. "Here," she said, turning the screen. "I noticed something strange in the background." Roman leaned in, his expression hardening as he studied the sequence. "The private cargo dock," he said, more to himself than her. "That's Kovac's man." "Kovac?" "A rival who's been testing boundaries." Roman straightened, pinning her with an intense stare. "You've accidentally documented a murder, Ms. Everly. If Kovac learns you have these files, you become a liability." The pieces clicked into horrible place. The armed guards, the security protocols, the fortress-like construction. She wasn't in some wealthy recluse's mansion, she was in a crime lord's stronghold. "You're not just a businessman," she said quietly. "No." He didn't insult her with denials. "And right now, I'm your best chance at survival." Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the laptop. "What do you want?" "You'll stay here under my protection until I neutralize the threat. I need a copy of those files for investigation, but I won't confiscate your work." Sloane's mind raced. She was trapped either way. If she left, she was vulnerable. If she stayed, she was at his mercy. But he'd been surprisingly reasonable so far, and she'd seen how his men operated. There might be room to negotiate. "If I agree," she said carefully, "I want conditions. You clone the card with me present, and I want my passport locked in the room safe." Roman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Acceptable." He spoke quietly to Elias, who left and returned minutes later with a small device. "Right-blocked duplicator," Roman explained as he set it up. "It creates an exact copy without altering the original data. Watch." He walked her through each step, explaining the forensic procedure with unexpected patience. While they waited for the copy process, he poured coffee from a fresh carafe that Elias had brought. "Someone I cared for died because of betrayed information," Roman said suddenly, his voice softer than she'd heard it. He handed her a cup, his fingers brushing hers. "I don't take chances with witnesses anymore." The humanity in that admission caught her off guard. Before she could respond, the duplicator beeped completion. "You need to move," Roman said, returning to business. "Staying in one room too long makes you an easy target. We'll walk the corridor briefly. Elias will shadow us." Sloane welcomed the chance to stretch her legs even under guard. They stepped into the hallway, its thick carpet muffling their footsteps. The storm's fury was more evident here, wind howling against the reinforced windows. They'd taken perhaps 10 steps when a sharp crack split the air. Something struck the exterior stone beside the nearest window, sending chips flying. Roman's reaction was instant. He shoved Sloane against the wall, shielding her with his body, while Elias's weapon appeared as if by magic. "Inside!" Roman ordered, his voice deadly calm. "Now!" He hustled her back to the room, his hand firm against her lower back. The reality of her situation crashed over her. Someone out there would kill to eliminate what her camera had captured. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Roman secured the door. "That was a warning shot," he said, checking the balcony locks. "They suspect you're here, but they're not certain. These windows are bulletproof. You're safe inside." Sloane sank into a chair, adrenaline making her fingers tingle. How did they find this place so quickly? "They've been watching the villa. The storm forced them to distance, but they likely saw you arrive." Roman's expression was grim. "Rest assured, Miss Everly, my men are already moving to deal with the shooter." Elias positioned himself by the window, somehow managing to watch both the grounds and the room without seeming to look at either. The storm continued its assault on the villa, but now the rain and wind felt less threatening than what lurked beyond them. The crack of the bullet still echoed when Roman's hand clamped on Sloane's shoulder, pressing her against the wall. His other hand flew to his earpiece. "Perimeter breach, Sector 4, full lockdown. I want eyes on that shooter." His voice carried the kind of authority that expected instant obedience. A low, pulsing tone filled the corridor as metal shutters slid down the exterior windows with mechanical precision. The villa was transforming into a fortress around them. Sloane's heart hammered against her ribs. Fight or flight kicked in hard. And flight was winning. "My keys," she managed. "Just give me my keys. I'll take my chances with the storm." "No!" Roman's reply cut through her panic like steel. "You can't just—" He pointed to the marble floor. A tiny red dot danced across the surface, a sniper's laser sight probing for targets. Sloane's protest died in her throat. "Move!" Roman guided her quickly down the corridor toward the master floor's safe zone. Elias, on her 6. The guard fell into step behind them, his weapon ready but low. Roman stopped at a reinforced door, entered a code, and ushered them inside. The space felt like a bunker wrapped in luxury, all clean lines and subtle security features. "Phone and keys." Roman held out his hand. When Sloane hesitated, his expression hardened. "This isn't punishment, it's preventing you from running into a kill zone." She handed them over, hating the logic of it, hating more that she understood. "Here's the truth, Ms. Everly. Walk out that gate, you die. Stay under my protection, you live." He tucked her items into a drawer. "It's that simple." "Nothing about this is simple," she muttered. Roman turned to Elias. "You're her shadow. Get her whatever she needs." Into his earpiece. "Send up clothes in her size and a medical kit to the safe corridor." Sloane squared her shoulders. If she was trapped here, she refused to be helpless. "I want to learn your security protocols, the basic ones at least, and I want to be kept informed, not locked away like some fragile thing." Roman studied her for a long moment. The intensity of his gaze made her skin prickle. "Agreed, on the condition you follow every directive without question when it matters." She nodded. It was a better deal than she'd expected. "This suite connects to my office," Roman said, leading them through another coded door. "You'll stay here for faster response time." The space was elegant, but clearly designed for defense. Clear sightlines, multiple exits, reinforced walls. Sloane noted security panels, camera feeds, and subtle panic buttons as Roman and Elias did a sweep. Hours crept by. The storm's fury gradually softened to a steady drumbeat of rain. Sloane paced, watched staff deliver clothing and supplies, and tried to process how her life had transformed in less than 12 hours. Roman called her to his office in the afternoon. He gestured to one of the monitors, showing the cliff road. An unmarked van sat idle in the gray haze. "Kovac's men," he explained. "Testing our perimeter, waiting for a weakness." Sloane rubbed her wrist, which had been aching since her slip at the gate. Roman noticed. "Sit," he ordered, reaching for the medical kit. When she hesitated, he added, "Please." She perched on the edge of his desk while he examined her wrist with surprisingly gentle hands. "Mild sprain," he concluded, wrapping it efficiently. "Ice it when you can." His fingers were warm against her skin, his touch clinical but careful. This close, she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, like cedar and warm spice. It was oddly comforting. As dusk approached, exhaustion began to set in. The couch in Roman's office lounge looked increasingly inviting. Sloane curled up there, telling herself she'd rest just for a moment. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm, punctuated by quiet voices from security feeds. Roman worked at a table nearby, surrounded by maps and shipping manifests, his movements precise and controlled. Despite everything, the danger, the confinement, the complete upheaval of her life, Sloane felt her eyes growing heavy. Her last conscious thought was how strange it was to feel safe in the presence of such a dangerous man. But watching Roman's steady focus as he worked, listening to the rain and the soft murmur of his voice giving occasional orders, she couldn't deny that she did. Elias stationed himself near the door, a quiet sentinel. The room settled into an almost peaceful atmosphere, as if the storm and threats outside couldn't penetrate this bubble of calm. The soft glow of desk lamps cast Roman's profile in sharp relief as he studied his documents, occasionally making notes in a precise hand. The security feeds continued their quiet chatter, updating positions and reporting all clear sectors in hushed tones. Outside, the rain painted silvery trails down the bulletproof glass, and the fortress of Roman's villa stood firm against both weather and threats, protecting its unexpected guest as she drifted into sleep. Sloane woke to sunlight streaming through rain-washed windows, the light fracturing into golden patterns across the luxury bedding. Her phone, returned overnight without explanation, showed 7 Raucon a.m., its familiar weight in her hand, strangely comforting after its absence. A folded note waited on the polished mahogany nightstand, the thick cream paper bearing a precise, angular script. Courtyard, 10 minutes. No signature needed. After a hasty shower and change into the workout clothes she'd found laid out, perfectly her size, which was unsettling, she navigated the villa's winding corridors, following the directions she'd memorized yesterday. She found Roman in the indoor courtyard, wearing fitted athletic wear that highlighted his powerful build. The charcoal compression shirt revealing the muscled contours of his chest and shoulders, athletic pants clinging to strong thighs. The space was a blend of modern gym and classical architecture, with high glass ceilings letting in the morning light that cast dramatic shadows across the marble floor. Ancient columns contrasted with state-of-the-art training equipment, while potted Mediterranean plants softened the clinical precision of the space. "Time for your first lesson in survival," he said, without preamble, his voice echoing slightly in the vast room. His eyes, more gray than blue in this light, assessed her with cool efficiency. Sloane straightened, squaring her shoulders despite the lingering ache in her wrist. "I thought you were just going to lock me away." "Being helpless makes you vulnerable." He gestured to a wall of security feeds, mounted discreetly among the classical moldings, screens showing every angle of the villa and its grounds. "We start with observation?" For the next hour, Roman taught her to spot patterns in crowd movement, to identify a tale by watching reflections in windows and polished surfaces, to note which faces appeared too often in different locations. His teaching style was precise but patient, breaking down complex concepts into digestible pieces, correcting her gently when she missed something obvious. "The human brain filters out repetition," he explained, pointing to a guard who appeared in 3 different camera feeds. "You need to train yours to do the opposite." "Never take the same route twice," he demonstrated, leading her through the villa's corridors, pointing out alternate pathways, service entrances, blind spots. "Randomize your timing. Stay away from windows unless necessary. Glass is always a vulnerability." At a doorway, he positioned her slightly to the side, his hands warm and firm on her shoulders as he adjusted her stance. "Stand here. Smaller target, better visibility, quicker escape route." His hand on her shoulder was warm and steady, the casual strength in his fingers making her skin tingle beneath the thin fabric of her shirt. Sloane tried to ignore how his proximity affected her breathing, how the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot, made her want to lean closer. They moved to a small medical station tucked into an alcove, where he showed her proper bandaging technique for her sprained wrist. His fingers were gentle but clinical as he wrapped the bandage, the contrast between his lethal capability and this tender attention creating a confusing swirl of emotions in her chest. "Too tight?" he asked, looking up from his work. Their faces were inches apart, close enough that she could see the faint stubble along his jaw and a tiny scar above his right eyebrow. Sloane's breath caught as their eyes met, something electric and unspoken passing between them. The moment stretched, charged with tension that hummed in the small space between their bodies, before she pulled back, unnerved by her own response. It's fine, she managed, her voice sounding strained even to her own ears. Roman cleared his throat and reached for a sleek black case that sat on the counter. The movement broke the spell, returning them to the practiced formality of teacher and student. These are yours now. Inside was an earpiece, nearly invisible when worn, and a delicate silver bracelet that looked more like jewelry than security tech. He fitted the earpiece carefully, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin of her ear, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. Direct line to security. The bracelet is a panic button. 3 taps activates silent alarm. Our response. Time anywhere on the grounds is under 60 seconds. Pretty cage accessories, Sloane commented dryly, turning the bracelet over in her hands, noting the seamless craftsmanship that disguised its true purpose. Roman's expression hardened, the warmth from moments ago vanishing like morning mist. This isn't about caging you, it's about keeping you alive. By controlling every aspect of my movement, my choices. She held up the bracelet, its silver surface catching the light. By keeping me on an electronic leash. By giving you tools to survive. His voice was clipped, each word precise as a blade. The people hunting you won't hesitate to kill you for what you saw. They won't be gentle about it. And what about what I want? The question burst from her before she could stop it, layered with all the frustration of her captivity. What you want is to live. He stepped closer, authority radiating from every inch of his powerful frame, his presence filling the small space until it was hard to breathe. I don't need you docile, Ms. Everly. I need you obedient to protocols that will keep you breathing. There's a difference. The intensity in his eyes made her swallow hard, a mix of defiance and something more complicated rising in her throat. I won't be a passive prisoner. Good. His lips quirked slightly, the ghost of approval softening his severe features. Passive gets you killed. They spent the next few hours on practical exercises, emergency protocols, safe room locations, communication codes. Roman was thorough, ensuring she understood each element before moving on, occasionally testing her with unexpected scenarios that required quick thinking. Near midday, an alert sounded, a different tone than the others she'd heard. A security feed on the nearest monitor shifted to show a drone approaching the outer gate, its small form hovering just beyond the property line. Stay here, Roman ordered, striding out with the fluid grace of a predator, already speaking rapidly into a communication device concealed in his sleeve. He returned minutes later, holding a flash drive between thumb and forefinger as if it were contaminated, his expression glacial. After scanning it with a specialized device for digital threats, he inserted it into a secure terminal built into the wall. A single image appeared on the screen. Sloane at the gala, caught in the reflection of a window, her profile illuminated by the chandeliers as she'd studied the paintings. Below it, a timestamp and message in stark red text. She dies for what she saw. Sloane felt the blood drain from her face, a cold weight settling in her stomach. Roman's jaw clenched, the muscle ticking with barely contained fury. This is why you can't leave, he said quietly, the controlled rage in his voice more frightening than any shout. But you need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. He checked his watch, the expensive timepiece gleaming against his tanned skin. Get changed. Dark clothes, comfortable shoes. We leave at twilight. The rest of the afternoon passed in tense preparation. Roman coordinated with his security team, while Sloane tried to process the reality of her situation. The threat no longer abstract, but terrifyingly concrete. She changed into the provided clothing, high-quality, functional pieces in dark colors that would blend into shadows. At dusk, they descended to the garage, a cavernous space housing an impressive collection of luxury and tactical vehicles. A heavily armored SUV waited, engine purring softly, flanked by guards in tactical gear. Roman opened her door, hand hovering protectively near her back as she climbed in, the warmth of his palm radiating through her light jacket. The vehicle purred to life, leading a convoy out through reinforced gates that opened and closed with military precision. Sloane's heart thundered in her chest as they wound up the coastal road, the villa's lights diminishing behind them. Fear, yes, but also a sharp thrill of attraction she couldn't deny, watching Roman's capable hands on the wheel, his profile stern in the fading light, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They climbed higher, toward an overlook above the docks. The Adriatic stretched dark and endless below, city lights twinkling along the shore like scattered diamonds. Sloane could see the Seabright Hotel in the distance, its distinctive silhouette illuminated against the night sky, where everything had started just days ago. A lifetime ago, it seemed now. Roman's security teams moved with practiced efficiency, securing the perimeter in silent coordination. He remained close to Sloane, his presence both reassuring and overwhelming, his body heat a constant reminder of his proximity in the cool evening air. "Ready?" he asked softly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. Sloane nodded, though her pulse was racing beneath the delicate silver bracelet. She wasn't sure what she'd see, but she knew it would change everything. The weight of the panic button on her wrist was oddly comforting, a reminder that whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. The night air was cool and salt-scented as they emerged from the vehicle, carrying the tang of brine and distant industry. Roman's hand settled at the small of her back, warm and steady through her jacket, guiding her toward the edge of the overlook. Below, the docks sprawled in a maze of containers and cranes, pools of harsh industrial light creating islands in the darkness, holding secrets she was about to discover. The convoy halted beneath a rusted metal canopy overlooking the cargo yard. Fog rolled in from the sea, wreathing shipping containers in ghostly tendrils. The air smelled of salt and wet steel. Roman guided Sloane to the edge of the overlook, his hand steady at her lower back. "Watch," he said softly. "Really watch." Below, men moved through the shadows like pieces on a chessboard. Roman pointed out strategic positions, sniper nests, tucked into crane towers, guards patrolling precise routes, zones where rival territories overlapped. "That warehouse," he indicated with a slight nod, "belongs to the men who want you dead. They control 3 docks and 2 processing plants." Sloane studied the layout through a photographer's eye, noting angles and lines of sight. "You're showing me this, so I understand why I can't leave." "Yes." His honesty was brutal but necessary. "This is the reality you accidentally captured." A flash of movement caught her attention. Before she could process it, gunfire erupted from below. The sound echoed off metal containers as bullets sparked against the canopy above them. Roman's reaction was instantaneous. He shoved her down between the SUV's seats, covering her body with his. His weight pressed her into the floorboards as he barked orders into his comm unit. The response was devastating in its efficiency. Roman's men moved like smoke, neutralizing threats with surgical precision. Through the window, Sloane glimpsed shadows falling, muzzle flashes dying out. She was acutely aware of Roman's heartbeat hammering against her back, his breath controlled despite the chaos. One hand braced beside her head, while the other held his weapon. He was coiled violence waiting to strike, yet every movement shielded her completely. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes. When silence fell, it felt deafening. "Clear," came the report through Roman's earpiece. 3 hostiles down, 2 fled east, no casualties on our side. Roman didn't move immediately. His body remained protectively curved over hers as he verified the all clear. Sloane could smell gunpowder and expensive cologne, an oddly intoxicating combination that made her pulse spike. Finally, he eased back, helping her sit up. His eyes scanned her for injuries while his men secured the perimeter. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough. Sloane shook her head, though her wrist throbbed where she'd braced against the floor. "I'm okay." A dark smear of blood stained his white shirt cuff. Her eyes widened, but he shook his head. "Not mine." The drive back to the villa was tense. Roman kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near his weapon. His profile was sharp in the dim light, jaw clenched tight. As they passed through the estate gates, he finally spoke. "No one touches what's mine." The possessive word sent a shiver down Sloane's spine, equal parts rebellion and arousal. She wanted to argue that she wasn't his, but her body betrayed her with a flash of heat. Inside, Roman insisted she see the house doctor. The medical suite was state-of-the-art, suggesting this wasn't the first time bullets had followed someone home. Dr. Chen was efficient and gentle, checking for injuries while Roman waited in the doorway, his presence a dark anchor. "Minor contusions," the doctor reported. "The wrist sprain from earlier is aggravated but not severe. Ice, compression, and rest." Roman nodded sharply. "Thank you, doctor." Instead of returning her to the guest suite, Roman led Sloane to his office. The space was masculine and elegant. Leather furniture, dark wood, walls of books. A hidden door suggested a private apartment beyond. "You should try to rest," he said, but made no move to dismiss her. Sloane sank onto the leather couch, knowing sleep was impossible. Her mind replayed the firefight in vivid detail. The violence, yes, but more potently the feeling of Roman's body protecting hers. Rain had faded to a gentle mist against the windows. Roman worked at his desk, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to reveal corded forearms. The blood on his cuff had dried to rust brown. Neither spoke. The silence hummed with unresolved tension, like electricity before a storm. Every small movement seemed magnified. The scratch of his pen, her shifting on the leather, the clink of ice in his whiskey glass. Sloane watched him through half-closed eyes. His movements were controlled, but she could see the residual adrenaline in the tightness of his shoulders. The fight had awakened something primal in him, something that hadn't fully settled. The space between them felt charged, dangerous in a different way than bullets. She should be terrified of him after witnessing his capacity for violence. Instead, she couldn't stop thinking about how naturally he'd use that violence to protect her. Minutes stretched into hours. The grandfather clock in the corner marked midnight with soft chimes. Neither made any move to leave, as if breaking the silence would shatter whatever fragile thing was building in the quiet. Outside, fog continued to roll in from the sea, softening the harsh edges of the night. But inside, every edge felt sharp enough to draw blood, especially the edge of awareness between them, growing more acute with each passing moment. Sunlight streamed through the villa's high windows, casting long shadows across marble floors. The morning air held a crisp freshness after days of rain, but neither Roman nor Sloane had touched their breakfast trays. Sleep had been elusive for both after the previous night's violence. Sloane wandered into the sunroom gallery, drawn to the black and white photographs that lined the walls. They captured ships in various states, some gleaming and new, others battle-worn. Each image showed a masterful understanding of light and shadow. Roman found her there, studying a particularly striking shot of a cargo vessel cutting through rough seas. His footsteps were nearly silent on the polished floor. "These are incredible," Sloane said, not turning around. The composition, the timing, whoever took them really understood their craft. A heavy pause filled the air before Roman spoke. "Marina took them." His voice carried an unfamiliar weight. "She had an eye for finding beauty in industrial things." Sloane turned then, catching the past tense. "Had?" Roman's jaw tightened. He moved closer to one of the photos, touching its frame with unusual gentleness. "She was killed 5 years ago. Someone I trusted." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the human beneath his controlled exterior. "Someone from my inner circle betrayed us both." The confession hung in the air between them. Sloane saw how loss had shaped him into the man who now stood before her, careful with trust, obsessive about security, protective to the point of possessiveness. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "About Marina." Roman nodded once, sharp and controlled. "Your turn," he said, clearly wanting to shift focus. "Tell me why you live the way you do, always moving, never settling." Sloane wrapped her arms around herself, considering her words. "Freedom was never given to me. I had to take it. My childhood was all temporary homes and quick exits. When I started photography, living out of a suitcase felt natural." She traced the edge of a frame. "I say yes to jobs that keep me moving because staying still feels like asking for disappointment." "And now?" Roman's eyes held hers. "When you're forced to stay still?" "Now I'm learning that maybe there's a difference between being trapped and choosing to stay." She met his gaze steadily. "But I won't give up who I am. My independence isn't negotiable." "I wouldn't want you to," Roman said quietly. "Your strength is—" He paused, searching for words. "Compelling." By midday, they had settled in Roman's office, reviewing Sloane's photos from the gala. She'd connected her laptop to a large monitor, scrolling through images with professional precision. "There," Roman pointed. "That man in the background. He works for the Casimir family. And the one by the bar is one of their enforcers." Sloane zoomed in on details he might have missed, a reflection in a window showing someone watching, a pattern of movement in the crowd that suggested coordination. "Civilians notice different things," she explained. "We look for angles, lighting, composition. Sometimes that means seeing patterns others miss." Roman nodded, impressed. "Your perspective is valuable. Fresh eyes." The day passed in a blur of analysis and quiet conversation. As evening approached, they found themselves in the chef's kitchen, empty at this hour. Roman insisted on cooking, claiming it helped him think. Sloane watched him move with efficient grace, chopping garlic and dropping pasta into boiling water. She stepped in to help, their shoulders brushing as they worked side by side. "You actually know what you're doing," she observed, amused. "Surprising?" He raised an eyebrow. "A crime lord who makes his own pasta." "A little." The comment startled a laugh from him, a rich, genuine sound that transformed his face. Sloane froze, struck by how it softened his features, made him human in a way that pierced her defenses. The laughter faded, but the warmth remained. They stood close now, the air between them charged with possibility. Roman's hand brushed hers as he reached for the olive oil, and neither moved away. Time seemed to slow, marked only by the soft bubbling of the pasta water and their synchronized breathing. The kitchen's warm light cast intimate shadows, creating a space that felt removed from the danger and complexity of their situation. Later, after a meal filled with loaded glances and careful movements, they walked the corridor to her suite. Roman moved with his usual calculated grace, but there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Sloane stopped at her door, keycard in hand. Roman stood opposite her in the hall, one hand braced against the wall. The space between them crackled with unspoken words and restrained desire. She could feel the weight of choice in this moment. Everything until now had been reaction, to danger, to circumstance, to necessity. But this would be deliberate, chosen. Meeting his dark gaze, Sloane whispered two words that would change everything. "Come in!" Roman's eyes searched hers, looking for any hesitation. Finding none, he stepped forward as she opened the door. The soft click of it closing behind them sealed their decision in the quiet night. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the world. Roman stood motionless, watching Sloane with an intensity that made her breath catch. The room felt charged, intimate in the soft lamplight. "Are you certain?" he asked, voice rough with restraint. "Yes." Sloane stepped closer, resting her palm against his chest. "I choose this. I choose you." His control fractured. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. When their lips met, it was slow, deliberate, a claiming rather than a conquest. "Tell me what you want," Roman murmured against her mouth. "Touch me. Make me forget everything but this." He complied with methodical care, each button of her blouse undone with precise attention. Sloane's fingers found his shirt, matching his pace. They undressed each other with growing urgency, pausing only for whispered consent and appreciative touches. Roman's scars told stories, silver lines across muscle, testament to survived violence. Sloane traced them reverently while he shuddered under her touch. When she scraped her nails down his shoulders, he groaned. "Beautiful," he breathed, laying her back on the bed. "My fierce, beautiful girl." He worshipped her body with thorough dedication, checking each response, adjusting to every gasp and arch. When he reached for protection in his wallet, Sloane's heart squeezed at his thoughtfulness, even in passion. Their joining was explosive, yet controlled. Roman never stopped watching her face, reading her needs. Sloane marked his shoulders, claimed him back just as fiercely. His possessive endearments, mine, precious, darling, were tempered by gentle questions. "Good? Like this? Tell me what you need." After, they lay tangled in sheets, breath settling. Roman traced patterns on her skin, while Sloane played with his fingers, both peaceful in the dark. "I haven't let anyone this close," Roman admitted quietly. "Not since Marina. The betrayal taught me distance was safer." Sloane turned to face him. "And now? Now you've destroyed all my careful walls." He brushed her hair back. "I should be terrified." "I am terrified," Sloane whispered. "I built my life around not staying, not belonging. But with you," she pressed her face to his chest. "I want to stay. That scares me more than any danger." Roman tightened his arms around her. "Stay. Let me keep you safe." "I'll stay because I choose to," she corrected gently. "Not because you keep me." His chuckle rumbled against her cheek. "Always maintaining your independence." "Always," she agreed, and felt his smile against her hair as they drifted to sleep. Morning light found them still entwined. Sloane woke to Roman watching her, his expression softened by sleep and something deeper. She borrowed one of his crisp, white shirts, rolling the sleeves and enjoying his heated gaze as she buttoned it. They shared coffee by the window, Roman's arm around her waist as they watched the sun burn off the last storm clouds. The peaceful moment shattered when his phone buzzed. Roman's expression went cold as he read the message. "We have a problem. The leak's been identified. Rafe Leone, my consigliere, he's been meeting rival operatives." Sloane's grip tightened on her cup. "The one who handles your business arrangements?" "Yes. He has access to routes, schedules, security protocols." Roman's jaw clenched. "I'm arranging a controlled meet to expose him. You'll stay here with Elias while—" "No." Sloane set her cup down firmly. "Don't sideline me. I need to understand what's happening so I'm not blindsided." Roman studied her, then nodded slowly. "I'll keep you informed through the earpiece. You'll be in the secure office lounge with Elias, monitoring everything. They spent the next hour planning. The SD card would be moved to an off-site vault, limiting what could be used against them. Roman would meet Rafe at a controlled location, while Sloane stayed protected but connected. At noon, Roman prepared to leave through the garage. Sloane gripped his arm before he could go. "Be careful," she said softly. He cupped her face, kissed her with fierce tenderness. "Always my fierce girl. Keep that earpiece in." Sloane watched him go, hand pressed to the device in her ear, acutely aware that their fragile peace hung by a thread. But she wasn't helpless anymore. She was chosen, informed, and ready. Elias took up position by the office door, while Sloane settled into the lounge. Multiple monitors showing security feeds. She could hear Roman's measured breathing through the earpiece as he drove to the meeting point. Their brief bubble of happiness felt like a dream now, but Sloane refused to regret it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as keeper and kept, but as equals who chose each other. The morning's gentle intimacy had shifted to taut anticipation. Sloane straightened her borrowed shirt, touched her still tender lips, and focused on the monitors. She was done being a passive player in this game. Through the earpiece, she heard Roman's car door open and close. In position, his voice came low and clear. "Stay alert, precious." Sloane's fingers curled around the arm of her chair as she watched the feeds. Their piece might have a target on it, but she was ready to fight for what they'd found. The office lounge hummed with electronic tension as Sloane watched Roman's convoy approach the waterfront warehouse. Multiple feeds showed his security team taking positions. Fluid shadows against concrete and steel, their movements precise and deadly in their efficiency. The blue-white glow from the screens cast her face in harsh relief as she tracked each man's position, mentally mapping their formation. Her borrowed shirt still carried Roman's scent, sandalwood, and something uniquely him. A comfort wrapped around her as she monitored each screen with unwavering focus. Through her earpiece, Roman's breathing remained steady, controlled despite the danger. "Perimeter, secure," he murmured, voice pitched for her alone, low and intimate in a way that sent warmth spreading across her skin despite the circumstances. The digital clock on the main monitor flipped to 12:10 p.m., and almost immediately her tablet chimed. Unknown number. Sloane's finger hovered over dismiss, but the preview made her stomach clench and twist into a painful knot. "I can get you out. Roman will sacrifice you to save his empire. Meet me at the old lighthouse. Julian Crest, her ex." The name alone brought back memories of subtle manipulation, of feeling constantly off balance, of apologies that somehow left her feeling like she was the one who needed to be sorry. She blocked the number, but immediately forwarded the message to Roman, refusing to hide anything that could affect their safety, refusing to be the weak link. "Running facial recognition on Julian Crest now," Elias reported from his post, his voice clipped and professional. The keyboard clattered beneath his fingers as multiple windows populated the main screen. Surveillance photos from Sloane's previous events, galas, private parties, corporate functions. Her breath caught as patterns emerged like a sinister connect the dots. Julian's familiar face in the background of multiple gigs, lingering near service entrances, and nearby, men they now knew worked for Roman's rivals. The coincidences were too perfect, too calculated. "He's been tracking you!" Roman's voice came cold but careful through the earpiece, the restraint in his tone more frightening than rage would have been. "Julian launders money for the Corsetti crew. Your booking schedule." "He used me to scout locations," Sloane finished, bile rising in her throat, bitter and acidic. All those coincidental run-ins, his insistence on catching up after her shoots, the questions about security, that seemed casual at the time. She gripped the chair arms until her knuckles went white, fury and betrayal coursing through her veins like ice water. "This isn't your fault," Roman said softly, reading her silence with unnerving accuracy, as if he could see through the cameras directly into her mind. Sloane squared her shoulders, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. "I won't let him make me feel helpless again." The words came out stronger than she felt, but speaking them aloud made them more real. On the warehouse feed, a black sedan pulled up 10 minutes early, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon sun. Rafe Leone stepped out, elegant in a charcoal suit that screamed old money and subtle power. He smoothed an invisible wrinkle, checked his expensive watch with practiced nonchalance, then made a subtle gesture toward the shipping containers stacked like building blocks against the far wall. "Camera 3. Elias highlighted a zoomed view. the image crystallizing to show Rafe's profile. Signal confirmed. He's communicating with someone. Audio crackled through the speakers, a planted recording device catching Rafe's words with perfect clarity. The northwest route is clear Thursday. Roman's attention will be divided. The pause carried weight, significance that made Sloane's skin crawl. Roman's text flashed on her tablet, 3 simple words that confirmed what they all suspected. It's him. Sloane watched Roman's team move into position, black figures converging like predators, circling wounded prey. The betrayal felt personal. Rafe had dined in this house, had shared cigars with Roman, had access to every security measure meant to keep her safe, had smiled at her across the dinner table while plotting to destroy them all. Static burst through the comms, sharp and jarring. Sloane adjusted her earpiece, wincing at the noise, but the interference grew worse, crackling like distant gunfire. On her left monitor, a new feed flickered to life. Interior cameras from within the mansion itself. Rooms she recognized. Hallways she'd walked. "Someone's accessing the system locally," Elias snapped, drawing his weapon with fluid grace, the metal catching the blue light from the screens. "Stay here while I sweep the corridor. Lock this door behind me." Sloane's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched him disappear through the door, the soft click of the lock engaging behind him. The house feeds showed empty hallways, pristine and silent, but pixels distorted at random intervals across multiple cameras. Someone was definitely tampering with the system, erasing their presence as they moved. Her tablet chimed again, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. This time the message contained a photo. Sloane at a cafe, apparently accepting an envelope from a known Corsetti enforcer. The timestamp was from 2 days before the gala, when she'd been shooting a wedding in Prague, thousands of miles away. "It's fake!" she whispered, into her earpiece, praying the comm still worked despite the static. "Roman, they're trying to frame me. They've doctored photos." Footsteps approached the office door. Heavy, deliberate, not Elias's familiar tread with its confident rhythm. These steps were measured, hunting, predatory. Sloane's pulse roared in her ears like ocean waves as she watched the door handle begin to turn with excruciating slowness. The warehouse feed showed Roman moving toward Rafe, black suit against gray concrete, unaware of the danger unfolding in his own home. The comms crackled with useless static, cutting her off from warning him. She could see distorted reflections in the window, multiple shapes moving in the corridor, shadows shifting beneath the door. The footsteps stopped directly outside, a moment of pregnant silence more terrifying than sound. Every lesson Roman had taught her crystallized in that moment. Don't be predictable. Use the environment. Stay calm under pressure. She slid silently from her chair, bare feet silent on the marble floor, cold against her skin. The security panel by his desk would seal all floor exits with one code, a failsafe he'd shown her, just in case. The door handle kept turning, agonizingly slow, metal against metal. Sloane's fingers hovered over the keypad as she calculated angles, escape routes, anything she could use as a weapon. The letter opener on the desk, the heavy crystal paperweight, the fire extinguisher in the corner. Roman had taught her to survive, not just hide, to fight, not just flee. Her borrowed shirt caught the light as she moved, a flash of white that reminded her of his promise that first night. "No one touches what's mine." But she wasn't just his to protect anymore. She was her own first line of defense, her own guardian. The handle completed its rotation with a soft click that sounded like thunder in the stillness. Sloane squared her shoulders, planting her feet firmly on the cold floor, ready. She might be afraid. The trembling in her hands proved that. But fear didn't mean helpless. Not anymore. Never again. Through the failing comms, she caught fragments of Roman's voice, urgent and sharp. "Back up. House. Trap." The words broken, but their meaning clear. He knew. He was coming. Static swallowed the rest as the door began to open, a sliver of light from the hallway stretching across the floor like a blade. Elias's weapon cleared its holster in one smooth motion as heavy footsteps approached. 2 of Roman's most trusted houseguards, Marcus and Stefan, burst through the office door with guns drawn. "Miss Everly," Marcus's voice was cold. "You need to come with us for questioning." Stefan thrust a tablet forward, displaying the doctored photo of her accepting money from the rivals. "Explain this." "It's fabricated," Sloane said, hands raised. "Look at the lighting inconsistencies." "We have orders to secure you until this is sorted," Marcus cut in. Elias positioned himself between them and Sloane, Stand down. She's under my protection. The radio crackled. Roman's voice filled the tension-thick air. All units, this is Voss. Miss Everly is to be escorted to the safe room and held there until I return. She's not to be harmed. I will personally investigate these allegations. The formal tone stabbed at Sloane's heart. After everything they'd shared, did he actually believe she could betray him? First Julian's manipulation, now this distance in Roman's voice. It felt like the walls were closing in. Sir, Elias acknowledged, moving to secure the principal now. He guided Sloane into the hallway, maintaining a protective stance. The other guards flanked them, weapons lowered but ready. Their boots echoed on marble as they headed toward the safe room 3 floors below. Miss! A quiet voice made Sloane turn. Thomas, one of the younger guards, hung back from the group. I know you're innocent. I can help you prove it. Elias tensed. Keep moving. But Thomas persisted, voice barely above a whisper. There's a service exit. You could gather evidence. Clear your name. Here. He pressed a dark hooded jacket into her hands. Before they lock you away. Don't listen, Elias warned. Trust the system. Sloane's fingers clenched in the jacket's fabric. The system. Always the system, controlling her movements, deciding her fate. Julian had used her. Now Roman was treating her like a suspect. Her chest tightened with the need to breathe, to run, to take back control. At the next corner, while Elias checked their 6, she made her choice. The jacket slipped over her head as she ducked away from the group, following Tomas's gesture toward a service corridor. Her heart thundered against her ribs. This way, Tomas whispered, leading her through narrow halls that smelled of cleaning supplies and old paint. Quick and quiet! They emerged into cool mist, the garage's side door whispering shut behind them. A van idled 20 yards away, its sliding door opening with a soft rumble. Relief lasted only seconds. Rough hands seized her arms. A cloth-covered face loomed close. The van's interior gaped like a metal mouth. No! She fought, but another set of hands grabbed her legs. They hauled her inside as something sharp pricked her neck. Sweet dreams, photographer, a voice sneered. Inside the mansion, Elias's shout echoed through the halls. Principal is gone! Thomas is missing! Possible hostile! Roman's voice cut through every radio, every earpiece. The cold formality had vanished, replaced by something that made hardened men step back. Full lockdown. I want every camera feed from the last 10 minutes. Track that van. A pause that crackled with lethal intent. They have her. Sloane tried to focus, to remember her training, but the sedative pulled her under like dark water. The last thing she heard was Roman barking coordinates, ordering teams to cut off escape routes. Then gray fog rolled in, thick and heavy, dragging her down into chemical sleep. Her final coherent thought was of Roman's eyes that morning, soft in the dawn light as he'd kissed her awake. How had everything shattered so fast? The van's tires squealed on wet pavement. Voices argued about routes and checkpoints. But Sloane floated away from it all, consciousness slipping through her fingers like smoke. Someone checked her pulse. She's under. Call the boss. Yeah, another voice replied. Tell him we got his witness and her camera. The words meant to reach her, to matter, but the gray fog swallowed everything. Sloane surrendered to the chemical darkness, Roman's voice still echoing in her mind. They have her. As the world faded to nothing. Around her, the van sped through gathering mist, carrying her further from safety with each passing second. From the mansion's highest window, Elias watched the vehicle vanish into the gloom while relay teams tracked its movement through the city's network of cameras. Inside his convoy, Roman's knuckles went white on his phone as satellite footage loaded, showing the van's path. His expression promised retribution, but his voice remained deadly calm as he coordinated the response. They had taken what was his. They would learn exactly what that meant. But Sloane knew none of this as the sedative pulled her under completely. The last traces of consciousness dissolved, leaving only darkness, silence, and the fading warmth of the morning's memories. Consciousness returned like a tide of broken glass. Sloane's head throbbed, her mouth cotton dry. Rain tapped a tinny rhythm overhead as her vision slowly cleared. The room stank of rust and salt air. Metal filing cabinets lined water-stained walls. A single bulb swayed above, casting nervous shadows. Her wrists burned where zip ties bit into flesh. Finally awake. Julian Crest's familiar voice carried that practiced concern she'd once mistaken for genuine care. He crouched before her chair, all designer clothes and calculated charm. I tried to warn you about Roman. By having me drugged and kidnapped? Her voice rasped. Such a gentleman. Sometimes we hurt the ones we love to save them. He touched her knee. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Now. Rafe Leone emerged from the shadows, elegant and serpentine in his tailored suit. Let's keep things civil. His calm was more terrifying than rage. We just need 2 simple items. The original SD card and Roman's shipping schedules. Sloane's pulse quickened. They thought she still had leverage. She could use that. The card's hidden, she met Rafe's gaze. Only I know where. Convenient. Rafe's smile didn't reach his eyes, but time-consuming. Rain drummed harder. Through grimy windows, sodium lights cast an amber haze over shipping containers and idle cranes. Sloane counted 4 armed men visible outside. 2 more by the door, noted the exposed wiring along walls, the rusted pipes, anything that might matter. Miles away, Roman stood in the tactical van's blue glow, studying thermal imaging feeds. Blood darkened his sleeve where a ricochet had creased his arm during the convoy's emergency turn. The medic hovering nearby knew better than to insist on treatment. Drone 3 has movement, an operator reported. Loading dock north of Pier 12. Signal jammers? Roman's voice was arctic. Active in sectors 4 through 7. Good, he checked his weapon. Move the assault team into position. Back in the office, Julian paced, his swagger fraying. Just tell us where the card is, Sloane. Don't make this harder. Like you made my work harder. Bile rose in her throat. Using my bookings to scout for your friends. I needed the access. He shrugged. You were always so conveniently mobile. Shame burned hot, then crystallized to rage. She'd trusted him once. Let him close enough to learn her patterns. Her independence twisted into vulnerability. Rafe's phone buzzed. He checked it, then smiled thinly. Roman's convoy spotted near the south gate, right on schedule. You planned this. Sloane's mind raced. The false evidence, turning his men against me. Simply business. Rafe straightened his cuffs. Though I admit, watching his face when they showed him that doctored photo, priceless. A distant thump made the window rattle, then another. Julian frowned. What was that? Rafe moved to the glass. Check the perimeter. Sloane closed her eyes, counting seconds, remembering Roman's lessons about breach timing. 3, 2. The flashbang shattered windows in a burst of light and thunder. Gunfire erupted outside. The door exploded inward as Roman charged through behind a ballistic shield, 2 teams flooding the space with coordinated precision. Down! He grabbed Sloane, dragging her behind the shield as bullets chewed the walls. The shield's impact knocked the chair sideways. She rolled clear of splintering wood as Roman's men engaged the guards. Through smoke and muzzle flashes, she glimpsed Julian diving for cover. Rafe already vanished like a ghost. Roman's arm locked around her waist, keeping her protected as the firefight intensified. The rain hammered down outside, drowning screams and breaking glass. Brass casings tinkled across concrete. Someone shouted coordinates through radio static. But Sloane focused only on Roman's solid presence, the steady rise and fall of his chest against her back, his grip never wavering as chaos erupted around them. She'd run from safety into a trap. But he'd come for her anyway, bleeding and lethal and determined. The realization hit harder than any bullet. Stay close, he growled, shifting the shield as a new angle of fire opened up. We're not done yet. Sloane pressed against his side, feeling his heartbeat hammer through tactical gear. No, they weren't done. But for the first time since the van doors closed, she could breathe again. The office descended into war, rain, and gunfire, creating a deadly symphony. Roman held position, shielding her from harm, while his teams methodically cleared the space. Through smoke and shadow, justice was coming due. Sloane watched it unfold, memorizing every detail. The flash of muzzles, the crack of return fire, the way Roman's men moved like water around obstacles. She might be zip-tied and bruised, but she wasn't broken. She'd survived, she'd learned, and she had information they needed about Julian's network, about Rafe's betrayal, about the layers of deception that had brought them here. Once they were clear, she would tell Roman everything. But first they had to survive the next few minutes as bullets continued to pepper their position and shouts echoed through the shipyard night. Roman's shield caught another impact, the metal ringing. He adjusted his grip on her, keeping her covered. Trust me, he murmured against her hair. Yes. No hesitation now, no running. The firefight intensified, spreading through the building. But Sloane stayed focused on Roman's breathing, his unwavering protection. The rest was just noise and fury, already fading into memory as rescue arrived in force. The world exploded into chaos as gunfire erupted across the office space. Roman shoved Sloane behind a heavy steel desk, his body covering hers until she was securely wedged against the metal. "Stay down." He pressed a spare earpiece into her palm. "Channel 3, you'll hear everything." Then he was moving, a controlled storm of violence. Two men rushed their position. Roman dropped them with precise shots to their legs. A third tried to flank. He went down hard from a brutal elbow strike. Roman's movements were fluid, efficient, leaving disabled bodies but no deaths in his wake. Blood darkened his sleeve where another bullet had grazed him. He didn't seem to notice. "South exit clear," crackled through Sloane's earpiece. "Target Leone, moving to catwalk." Julian's face appeared briefly above them. He scrambled for the metal stairs, limping on his expensive loafers. "This wasn't the plan," he shouted to someone Sloane couldn't see. "The plan changed," Rafe's voice echoed from the shadows. He was trying to circle behind Roman's position, weapon raised. But Roman smiled, a cold, satisfied expression. He tapped his ear. "Now." Suddenly, the warehouse lights blazed to full brightness. Laser sights painted red dots across Rafe's chest as Roman's hidden teams revealed their positions. "You thought I'd walk into your kill box." Roman's tone was conversational. "I knew you'd take the bait when we leaked the card's location. The tracker inside its case led us right here." Rafe's face contorted. "What tracker?" "The one I planted when I cloned it. You were so focused on the data, you never checked the hardware." Roman advanced slowly. "Amateur mistake." Sloane realized the depth of his strategy. He'd used her captured evidence as a beacon, knowing greed would draw their enemies to this exact spot. The rescue wasn't just a rescue. It was a trap within a trap. Above them, Julian lost his footing on the catwalk. His ankle twisted with a sharp crack and he screamed, dangling before dropping into the waiting arms of Roman's men. Rafe tried to bolt, but Roman was faster. He tackled his former consigliere, disarming him with brutal efficiency. But instead of a killing shot, Roman zip-tied Rafe's wrists. "Take him to the car," he ordered. "Our friend in white-collar crimes will be very interested in those offshore accounts we found." Distant sirens wailed, right on schedule. Roman had arranged for a clean law enforcement contact to handle Rafe through legal channels, minimizing blowback and keeping his promise to Sloane about measured justice. They dragged Julian past her. He was whimpering about his ankle. "You used me," Sloane said clearly, meeting his eyes. "But you never owned me and you never will." Julian flinched from the steel in her voice. The man who had once manipulated her so easily now looked small and pathetic as they hauled him away. The gunfire had completely ceased. Roman's teams secured the perimeter as rival forces melted into the shadows, unwilling to tangle with both Roman's men and approaching police. Roman returned to Sloane, gathering her carefully in both arms. His heart hammered against her cheek. "The safe room order," he said roughly. "It wasn't because I doubted you. I needed you breathing." "I know." She pressed closer. "I ran because this terrifies me. Not you. What I feel for you. I've spent so long avoiding attachment. Listen to me." He tilted her face up. "To the world, I am whatever monster they need me to be, but never to you. Never." She believed him. The truth was in every gentle touch, every measured choice he'd made tonight. The sky above the shipyard had turned a deep purple blue, storm clouds finally breaking. Roman's medic hovered anxiously nearby, eyeing his bleeding arm. "Fine," Roman growled, "but in the car." They walked out together, his arm steady around her waist. In the back of the SUV, Sloane held his hand while the medic cleaned and stitched both grazes. Roman didn't flinch, but his fingers tightened on hers with each pull of the needle. Through the tinted windows, she watched police lights flash in the distance. Rafe would face justice through proper channels. Julian would learn what it meant to lose control. And she looked at Roman, seeing past the dangerous exterior to the man who had moved heaven and earth to protect her, who had chosen a better path because she asked it of him, who held her now like she was something precious rather than possessed. The medic finished bandaging Roman's arm. He immediately pulled Sloane closer, pressing his face into her hair. She felt the tension finally leaving his muscles as he assured himself she was safe. Around them, his men secured the scene with practiced efficiency. Reports crackled through their earpieces. All targets contained, evidence documented, cleanup crews inbound. The operation was wrapping up with the same precision it had begun. But in the bubble of the SUV's back seat, Sloane focused only on Roman's steady breathing and the way his hands cradled her like something irreplaceable. The violence was over. They had survived. And somehow, impossibly, they had found something worth protecting in the midst of it all. 1 week later, morning light spilled through tall windows, turning the sea below into a glittering expanse. The estate had settled into a different rhythm after the storm of violence, calmer, steadier, like the port city itself under new leadership loyal to Roman. The past 7 days had unfolded in measured steps. Roman's proxy testimony, ensuring Rafe's custody transfer, remained airtight. Julian's plea deal, dismantling rival operations piece by piece, and Sloane's careful processing of evidence photos for legal channels. She'd moved her original SD card to a bank vault yesterday. Roman present but hands-off except for necessary security. Sloane stretched in Roman's bed, silk sheets cool against her skin. The scent of fresh paint drew her from the warmth. She slipped on a dove-gray robe and padded barefoot through the quiet villa, following the trail of sea air and artistic promise. The old sunroom had transformed. Where before there had been empty walls and scattered furniture, now track lighting illuminated a private gallery. Her photographs hung in elegant frames, scenes from her travels capturing beauty in unexpected places. Market vendors laughing in Morocco, sunlight through ancient stone in Greece, fishing boats reflected in dawn-still harbor waters. The centerpiece was her abstract study of rain on glass from that first stormy night, blown large and luminous. The droplets looked like scattered diamonds caught in amber light. Roman stood in the doorway, watching her take it all in. "Your eye turns the harsh into the beautiful," he said softly. "You see what others miss. I wanted to honor that." Sloane touched a frame gently. "It's perfect, but we need to be clear about boundaries going forward." He nodded, entirely focused on her words. "I keep my passport," she said. "My studio in the city. My right to say no. Your protection can't become a cage." "Never." Roman crossed to a discreet panel in the wall, pressed his thumb to the biometric lock. A small safe emerged. "This is keyed only to you, your documents, your backup drives, whatever you need secured but accessible. I am your shield, not your jailer." She smiled, appreciating both the gesture and the man behind it, how far they'd come from that first night of storm and suspicion. At lunch, they hosted a small gathering of trusted allies in the villa's private dining room. Elias caught Sloane's eye across his wine glass, grinning. "Another graduate of survival school," he teased, "though you were our most determined student." "She was our best student," Roman corrected, his hand finding hers under the table. The afternoon passed in gentle conversation and shared meals, so different from the tense strategy sessions of days past. As sunset painted the sky in amber and rose, Roman led Sloane to the balcony where they'd first faced the raging storm together. No grand gestures, no elaborate speech. Just the two of them, the sound of waves below, and the simple grace of him sliding a ring onto her finger. A single perfect diamond bracketed by sapphires the color of deep water. "Stay," he said quietly. "Not as a prisoner or an asset, as my equal in private, my partner in public works, the one person who makes me choose mercy." "Yes," she answered, voice steady. "But on my terms, in my way. I wouldn't have it any other way." Later that night, they slow danced barefoot in the gallery. A vintage record player spun nearby, the soft patter of recorded rain mixing with actual sea breeze through open windows. The air tasted of salt and sweetness and possibility. Roman's hand spanned her lower back, keeping her close as they swayed. The villa hummed with quiet life, security teams at their posts, staff preparing for tomorrow, the steady pulse of a household at peace. "You're mine," Roman murmured against her hair, the words both possession and promise. Sloane pressed closer, feeling his heartbeat strong and sure. "And you're mine," she answered, "by choice." They had survived bullets and betrayal to reach this moment. The rivals were dismantled, the traitors removed through legal channels, the evidence secured. Her independence stood affirmed, not despite his protection, but alongside it. Their future stretched ahead, grounded in honest devotion and the delicate balance of danger made safe through trust. The ring caught the gallery lights as they turned, sparking like rain on glass. Through the windows, stars emerged above the darkening sea. The same water that had lashed so violently during their first meeting now lapped gentle and constant against the cliffs below. Sloane rested her head on Roman's shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent of cedar and gunpowder and home. His arms tightened fractionally, protective without constraining. They moved together in the soft light, two people who had chosen each other despite every obstacle, who had built something rare and precious from chaos. The music played on, rain and strings weaving together. Outside, waves whispered against stone. And in their private gallery, surrounded by images of beauty found in unexpected places, they danced.